Female Vocalist of the Year is Reba McEntire.
When the first sheriff's deputies arrived about 45 minutes after the crash, there were still small fires burning, even after dawn.
Most of your band were killed in this plane crash.
How did it affect me? It crushed me.
She sold more than 75 million records, built an empire, and became one of the most beloved women in country music. But behind the glittering awards and the big stages was a woman constantly fighting battles the world never saw. From childhood struggles on a dusty Oklahoma ranch to a career nearly crushed by rejection, from the devastating plane crash that almost destroyed her spirit to the red dress that caused major controversy in Nashville, Reba McEntire's story is not just about music, it's about resilience, survival, and bold choices that left fans divided. Some still call her the Queen of Country, while others say she changed everything the genre stood for. But the truth of how Reba transformed from Nashville's good girl into its most fearless artist is more dramatic than anyone ever imagined. Reba McEntire's story didn't begin under bright stage lights or in the glamorous halls of Nashville. It began in the rugged heart of Oklahoma, on land that most people called worthless. Born on March 28, 1955, in McAlester, she grew up as the third of 4 children, in a family defined by rodeo grit and relentless work. Her father, Clark McEntire, wasn't just a cowboy. He was a champion steer roper who won 3 world titles and carved his name into rodeo history. But success in the arena didn't mean luxury at home. The McEntires lived in a 3-room house without indoor plumbing, and Reba often reminded people that her family didn't even have a telephone until she was in 5th grade. Life was stripped down and tough, and it demanded more from her than most kids could handle. By 6 years old, Reba was already out working cattle, and by 7, she was putting in long hours on the family's 7,000-acre ranch in Chalky, Oklahoma. The ranch wasn't just cows. It was timber, a rock quarry, and even natural gas. Neighbors once sneered and called it sorry land. But for Reba, it was the classroom where she learned resilience and grit. If her father gave her toughness, her mother Jacqueline gave her music. Jacqueline had once dreamed of being a country star, but gave it up to raise her family. She never let that passion die, though, and passed it on by teaching her kids to sing during long drives to rodeo competitions. Those sing-alongs became the first steps of Reba's journey. In 9th grade, Reba, along with her siblings Pocky and Susie, formed the Singing McEntires. Their voices blended into tight harmonies that caught people's attention at local talent shows and fairs. One of their earliest triumphs came at a 4-H talent contest where they won 1st place, and their songs mixed classic country with pop hits of the day and gave small crowds a taste of what was coming. They even recorded a tribute to their grandfather called The Ballad of John McEntire, though only 1,000 copies were made. Today, it's a rare collector's item, but back then, it was just another sign of how far this family might go. For Reba, though, the stage was calling louder than the ranch. She became known for her powerful renditions of the national anthem at rodeos, and it was one of those moments in 1974 at the National Finals Rodeo that changed her life forever. In the audience that night was country singer Red Steagall, and when he heard her voice, he knew it was special. That chance encounter set in motion everything that followed. Within months, Reba and her mother packed up and left the ranch behind, driving nearly 700 miles to Nashville with little money but enormous determination. Jacqueline had once chased her own dream, but now she was determined to make sure her daughter got the chance she never had. But Nashville was no fairy tale. The road ahead would be harder than anything Reba faced on the ranch. When Reba McEntire arrived in Nashville in 1975 with her mother by her side, she wasn't walking into a dream. She was stepping into a battlefield. The city was filled with hungry singers, polished executives, and record labels that controlled every note artists put out. Reba and her mother scraped by in small rented apartments, taking odd jobs while they waited for someone to take a chance on her voice. Day after day, they sat in record label lobbies, praying someone would listen. Most doors stayed shut. Even with Red Steagall's connections, Nashville was a world where new artists were chewed up and forgotten. Still, in November of that year, Reba landed her first record deal with Mercury Records, a moment that seemed like the breakthrough she'd been fighting for. But the reality was crushing. Her debut single, I Don't Want to Be a One-Night Stand, released in 1976, failed to chart. Her next few singles barely cracked the top 20, and her 1977 debut album stalled at number 88. For a girl who had left everything behind, the lack of momentum was heartbreaking. She worked tirelessly, performing in tiny clubs for as little as $50 a night just to pay bills, borrowing money from family when she couldn't make ends meet. Having a record deal meant nothing if the songs didn't sell. Reba was learning fast that the industry could be cruel. The biggest battle wasn't just money, it was identity. Mercury wanted her to sound more like a polished pop country star, believing Nashville audiences were moving in that direction. Reba disagreed. She wanted to stay rooted in traditional country, the kind of music she grew up with. But producers kept pushing her toward glossy ballads and radio-friendly tracks that didn't fit her voice. Her 1981 album Heart to Heart leaned heavily into pop influences, and fans weren't buying it. It peaked at number 42 on the charts, a disappointing showing that deepened her frustration. For years, Reba fought to hold on to her authenticity, while executives tried to mold her into something she wasn't. By 1982, the strain was almost too much. 8 years in Nashville, 6 albums released, and still no consistent success. Her 6th record, Behind the Scene, flopped, leaving her at a crossroads. Reba even considered giving up her career altogether and moving back to Oklahoma to work on the ranch. But that turning point was closer than she realized. On January 8, 1983, her single Can't Even Get the Blues finally hit number 1 on the country charts. Ironically, the song had been passed over for another artist, but Reba fought hard to make it hers. She recorded it as a last-minute addition to her album Unlimited, and when it soared to the top, Reba celebrated the victory on a broken-down tour bus stranded on the side of the road. That bittersweet moment symbolized her journey. Success never came easy, but when it did, it was unforgettable. Her breakthrough proved she could stand tall against the industry's doubts, but it also marked the beginning of a new chapter. Because just when Reba was finally gaining momentum, tragedy would strike in a way that nearly ended it all. Just as Reba McEntire was finally breaking through in country music, life delivered a blow so devastating that it nearly ended her career for good. On March 16, 1991, after a private show in San Diego, tragedy struck. At 1:45 a.m., a small jet carrying 7 members of her band and her tour manager lifted off into the night. Within minutes, the plane slammed into Otay Mountain, just 10 miles from the airport. Everyone on board was killed instantly. The second plane carrying the rest of her crew made it safely, unaware that disaster had unfolded in the darkness behind them. Reba wasn't on that flight. Struggling with bronchitis, she had stayed behind with her husband Narvo Blackstock and her stylist. That small twist of fate, choosing to rest and travel the next day, saved her life. But for Reba, survival came with unbearable grief. The news devastated her. These weren't just band members. They were family. People she had toured with, lived with, laughed with, and trusted night after night. Their sudden loss tore a hole in her life that could never be filled. And when the investigation revealed the crash was caused by poor planning and pilot error, flying too low, failing to account for the mountains, it only deepened the tragedy. The heartbreak was so crushing that many wondered if Reba would ever perform again. But she did what she always had. She turned her pain into music. Just 6 months later, she released For My Broken Heart, an album dedicated to the friends she had lost. It wasn't just another record. It was a raw expression of sorrow and survival. The title track, which she originally planned as a duet with Clint Black, became a solo performance that cut straight through her grief. Fans felt it too. The album soared to number 13 on the Billboard 200 and became the first by a female country artist to go double platinum. Songs like If I Had Only Known carried a haunting weight, as though Reba was singing directly to the loved ones she would never see again. This tragedy became a turning point in her career. It showed the world that Reba wasn't just a polished performer. She was an artist who bled her soul into her songs. And while the pain never went away, the success of the album proved that even in heartbreak, she could rise stronger. But just as she found a way to carry on, another moment was about to push her back into the spotlight. This time not because of loss, but because of a scandalous red dress that shook Nashville to its core. In 1993, Reba McEntire did something that no one in Nashville expected, and it sent shockwaves through the entire country music industry. On September 29th, At the CMA Awards in Nashville, Reba stepped onto the stage wearing a gown that instantly became legendary. It wasn't Western fringe or a modest ball gown like fans were used to. It was a bright red velvet dress with a bold, daring neckline, held together by nothing but a sheer panel encrusted with over 2,000 crystals. Designed by Sandy Spica Borchetta, the dress blended high glamour with daring sensuality, and in a conservative country music world, it was like throwing gasoline on a fire. As she sang "Does He Love You" with Linda Davis, cameras had to adjust their angles during the live television broadcast. But it was too late. The image was already burned into people's memories. The reaction was immediate and intense. The very next morning, 37 newspapers across the country featured headlines about Reba's dress. Some called it iconic, others labeled it controversial. Garth Brooks, sitting in the front row, was said to have sat with his jaw dropped for half a minute. Dolly Parton even joked that Reba had out-dollied Dolly. Radio stations ran call-in polls, with thousands of fans voicing strong opinions. In Tulsa, one poll drew more than 10,000 calls in a single day. Fan mail flooded her office. 854 letters about the dress alone, some praising her boldness, others expressing disappointment. Her official fan club received over 1,200 letters, with some supporters saying they felt surprised, and a few even expressing their displeasure strongly. The controversy went beyond music. Women's magazines like Good Housekeeping weighed in, calling it a symbol of changing times in country music. For years, Reba had built her image on modesty, family values, and relatability. To many fans, she was the wholesome red-headed girl next door who made it big. That's why this one night, this one dress, rattled Nashville to its core. Conservative voices accused her of abandoning her roots. But for others, she was redefining what it meant to be a woman in country music. Bold, unapologetic, and unafraid to take risks. Even within her family, the reactions were divided. Her mother Jacqueline, who held deep conservative values, sat in the audience gripping her daughter Susie's arm and whispering in shock. Backstage, the tension was heavy, until Reba's father broke the silence with humor, asking her if she had accidentally worn the dress backwards. The family laughed, but the concerns lingered. Later, her mother pulled her aside, worried about the young girls who looked up to her. "You've always been a role model," she warned. "What are they going to think?" But the truth was, Reba had crossed a line she could never step back from. Whether people loved it or hated it, she had shown the world she wasn't afraid to shake tradition. That night, the red dress didn't just change her image. It cemented her as country's most controversial star. And while the dress scandal made headlines, behind the scenes her personal life was unraveling in ways even more dramatic. While Reba McEntire's career was skyrocketing, her personal life was marked by heartbreak, betrayal, and some of the most difficult choices she ever made. In 1976, at just 21 years old, she married rodeo star Charlie Battles, a man 10 years her senior who had already lived a hard, competitive life. At first, it seemed like the perfect match. Reba admired his strength, his connection to the rodeo world, and the stability he offered. But as her career gained momentum in the early 1980s, cracks began to show. Charlie wanted her to slow down, to stay closer to home, while Reba's passion demanded the opposite. By 1986, when she won Entertainer of the Year, their marriage was already collapsing. In her autobiography, Reba revealed one of the breaking points. Charlie once took $400 out of her purse without asking, a betrayal that cut deeper than the money itself. On November 11, 1987, just before her 32nd birthday, she filed for divorce. It was a painful split, not only because she loved Charlie, but because she had also become close to his two sons, whom she had helped raise. Walking away meant losing more than a husband. It meant losing part of the family she had built. But Reba didn't stay alone for long. In 1989, she married Narvel Blackstock, her steel guitar player turned manager. Their wedding was a private affair on a boat in Lake Tahoe, and together they built a powerhouse partnership. They founded Starstruck Entertainment, which managed not just her career, but eventually other artists too. Reba embraced Narvel's 3 children from his previous marriage, insisting she didn't see them as stepkids, but as her own. Then in 1990, Reba and Narvel welcomed their only son, Shelby. Despite her packed touring schedule, Reba transformed her tour bus into a nursery so she could keep Shelby by her side. Shelby struggled with ADHD, but Reba's determination to raise him with discipline and love helped shape him into a focused and determined young man. Instead of music, Shelby chose racing, and his mother proudly cheered him on from the sidelines of NASCAR tracks, just as she once had from rodeo arenas. For a while, it seemed like Reba had found balance, a career at its peak, a strong marriage, and a family she adored. But in 2015, after 26 years together, Nashville shocked her by asking for a divorce. Reba admitted later that it wasn't her decision but his, and she was blindsided. The split left her reeling. Nashville not only walked away with half of her fortune, estimated at nearly $47.5 million, but also with rumors swirling that he had quickly moved on with a close family friend. For Reba, the betrayal was almost unbearable. She had to learn to manage her career on her own for the first time in decades, rebuild her confidence, and prove that she could stand without him. Through it all, Reba turned the pain into strength. She poured herself into her work, her son, and her music, never letting the heartbreak define her publicly. Fans admired her resilience, but behind the smile, there was no denying the cost. And just when people thought her personal struggles were enough to break her, Reba took another risk that divided her fan base. For most of her career, Reba McEntire was known as country music's all-American sweetheart. But in the mid-2010s, she proved she wasn't afraid to risk everything by taking bold stands on issues that mattered to her. Her willingness to speak out became a defining part of her later career, showing fans a more personal side of the superstar. Throughout her career, Reba has always been willing to stand up for what she believes in, even when it meant facing criticism from some fans. She's never been afraid to lose money, fans, or opportunities if it meant staying true to her values. But her biggest battles came from within Nashville itself, where she confronted the deeply ingrained challenges facing women in the music industry. Reba McEntire wasn't just battling external pressures. She also took on her own industry, and she didn't care who she upset along the way. In the 1990s, she ruffled feathers by openly criticizing Garth Brooks, who at the time was country music's biggest superstar. Garth had revolutionized live shows with pyrotechnics, giant screens, and rock-style theatrics, but Reba dismissed the spectacle, insisting that the music should always come first. Cameras even caught her rolling her eyes when Garth beat her for a major award, and the clip spread quickly, fueling headlines about a feud. Then came Dolly Parton. In 2008, Reba recorded a cover of Dolly's classic 9 to 5 without asking permission, something that shocked many in Nashville, where etiquette and respect were still sacred. Dolly was said to be surprised, and though both stars later downplayed any tension, fans knew there was some frost between the two queens of country. But Reba's most important fights weren't about individuals. They were about the system itself. In 2015, a radio consultant made controversial comments comparing women in country music to side dishes rather than the main course. The comment ignited a firestorm, and Reba was one of the first major stars to call him out publicly. Her response went viral and helped spark changes in how radio supported female artists. She kept the pressure on in 2018, when major award shows seemed to overlook female artists in top categories. As a host that year, Reba used her platform to highlight the issue, bringing attention to the imbalance. At a time when younger female artists were struggling to break through, Reba was the one who used her influence to demand fairness. She also fought against ageism in a genre obsessed with youth. In 2010, at 54, she became the first woman over 50 to debut at #1 on the country charts, proving that older women still had a place at the top. Yet, she kept pointing out that radio often ignored seasoned artists like Trisha Yearwood and Martina McBride while promoting younger, less proven artists. For some executives, Reba was a thorn in their side, constantly challenging the rules. But for countless women watching from the sidelines, she was proof that speaking up could make a difference. Of course, calling out Nashville's power structure didn't come without consequences. Some insiders whispered that Reba was difficult. Others claimed she demanded too much control, and rumors swirled about on-set clashes during her sitcom. But the truth was clear. She was no longer willing to play the obedient good girl role the industry had assigned her. Reba had built a career powerful enough to withstand the backlash, and she wasn't afraid to use it. And while Nashville debated whether she had gone too far, Reba was already building something bigger, reinventing herself beyond music in ways that would secure her legacy forever. By the late 1990s, Reba McEntire had already secured her spot as one of country music's greatest voices, but what truly set her apart was her ability to reinvent herself again and again. She wasn't content with just topping charts. She wanted to expand her reach and prove she could dominate anywhere she set her sights. In 2001, she made the bold leap into television with her sitcom Reba. The show wasn't just a career experiment. It became one of the WB network's biggest hits. Week after week, millions tuned in to watch her play a single mother balancing chaos with humor and heart. What could have been a risky gamble turned into a triumph, running for 6 seasons and 125 episodes, with its finale pulling nearly 9 million viewers. For a country star with no prior sitcom experience, it was a groundbreaking success. Even while filming Reba, she never slowed down her music career. She released multiple albums during the show's run, including Room to Breathe in 2003, which debuted at #1 on the country charts. Her tours sold out arenas, with the 2004 Room to Breathe tour grossing over $40 million. On top of that, she crossed into Broadway, earning rave reviews in 2001 for her role as Annie Oakley in Annie Get Your Gun. Critics declared her performance one of the best of the season, cementing her as more than just a singer or sitcom star. She was a full-fledged entertainer. But Reba didn't stop there. She turned her brand into a business empire. In 2005, she launched a clothing line with Dillard's, selling women's clothes, shoes, and home goods. Over the next decade, it raked in over $200 million. She later teamed up with Cracker Barrel for a Western-themed retail line, which sold out almost immediately. And in 2023, she opened Reba's Place in Oklahoma, a restaurant and live music venue that drew 500,000 visitors in its first year alone. While her peers were slowing down, Reba was proving she could succeed in arenas, television, Broadway, retail, and hospitality all at once. The ultimate recognition came in 2011, when she was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame. Dolly Parton personally welcomed her, joking that they'd both made careers pretending to be hillbillies. But when Reba gave her acceptance speech, wearing her mother's wedding ring in tribute, it was clear the moment was more than just another honor. It was the culmination of a lifetime of sacrifice, resilience, and refusal to compromise. She had gone from a small-town ranch in Oklahoma to the most hallowed halls of Nashville, and she had done it on her own terms. Reba's journey showed that she wasn't just surviving the industry, she was redefining it. She had outlasted scandals, heartbreaks, and controversies, and each reinvention only made her more powerful. Reba McEntire's life is a story of contradictions: an Oklahoma ranch girl who became a global superstar, a good girl who risked her reputation to take bold stands, a woman who lost almost everything yet rebuilt herself stronger each time. She has lived through crushing career setbacks, personal betrayals, and tragedies that would have silenced most people. Yet every time the world counted her out, she found a way to transform the pain into power. Whether it was the heartbreaking plane crash that inspired one of her most successful albums, the scandal of a red dress that redefined her image, or the divorce that forced her to stand on her own, Reba proved that survival wasn't just an instinct for her. It was a choice she made over and over again. Her journey shows that success didn't come from being handed opportunities, but from clawing her way through rejection and doubt. She built her career on determination, reshaped it through reinvention, and defended it with a stubborn courage that often put her at odds with the very industry she helped define. By speaking out on issues that mattered to her, she risked fans, sales, and public approval. But she also opened the door for future artists to be braver. In many ways, her legacy is larger than the music itself. She became proof that country stars could be more than just singers. They could be forces of change. Even now, with her place in the Country Music Hall of Fame secured and her empire stretching from Broadway to business ventures, Reba McEntire's story feels unfinished. Every reinvention has surprised both fans and critics, and every risk has added another layer to her legend. For some, she'll always be the Oklahoma cowgirl, with a voice as wide as the prairie skies. For others, she's the rebel who dared to challenge Nashville's rules. But for all, she remains one of the most enduring icons country music has ever seen. And maybe that's the real secret behind Reba's legacy. It's not that she avoided failure or scandal, but that she faced them head-on and came out stronger. Her story is a reminder that behind every glittering stage light, there's a price to be paid for greatness, and few have paid it as fully as she has. If you've enjoyed uncovering the hidden truths and untold stories of Reba McEntire's journey, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the lives of the stars you thought you knew. Because as Reba's story proves, what happens behind the spotlight is often more shocking than the show itself.